Welcome to the 301 Podcast, the interview podcast for the hottest up-and-coming entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. Real, authentic, and inspiring. And here is your host, Marcus Engel. Let's get it started in 301.
Today in the 301 Podcast, we are joined by Isabelle Dijkhorst. She's an 18-year-old founder, and her startup is called Foundity. The past year has been quite crazy for her. She went to San Francisco, she went on a lot of stages, and today she's here in the 301 Podcast. Isabelle, welcome to the 301 Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's really funny because we met each other on a networking event, and the listeners, the old OGs, they know that in my tagline I have like the hottest up-and-coming entrepreneurs and creators. I showed you like the podcast, and you said something like, I'm upcoming and I'm an entrepreneur, so I think I should be here.
Yeah, I went immediately directly to say, I want to be on that podcast at some point. Yeah,
I find that so cool because like it was so confident. Like we literally met each other like 30 seconds or something like this.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt the energy, the honest energy, and I was like, sounds interesting. I like to come on podcasts like this just spontaneously as well. So
yeah, are you always this kind of confidence? Is this like would you describe yourself as confident or?
Okay, I try to be confident. Of course, there are some points where I have my lows, but I think especially with my entrepreneurial journey, I've become pretty secure in myself and in what I'm working on. So I think that shows off very well. I think.
And are you more kind of like the type like just winging it or like fake it till you make it? Or is it like real kind of like confidence like also within you?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. So I started off with a bit of a fake it till you make it because that actually does get you quite far because selling is part of business, right? So you do kind of have to bring that confidence. But if you don't believe in yourself, other people are also not going to believe in you. So I kind of just had to get to that point where I could display that. And then I kind of started to manifest into myself and just started to be that way, I suppose.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because also interesting, you are a personality type ENTJ.
Yeah.
Which is like the commander, and also I know this from her Instagram profile, so I'm not stalking her. And I find this quite interesting because it's kind of like the ideal personality type for a founder. Mm-hmm. And you became a founder, right? So is that also like kind of something that was always a little bit ingrained into you, or like where does this kind of like fascination for business come from?
Yeah, actually not many people know about the MBTI. So I'm very happy actually that you looked into that. I used to be, this is called ENFJ. That is someone who's a little bit more on the softer side. But ENTJ is someone who is a little bit more commanding. And this also shows, you don't necessarily have to be born into the person who is able to give directions. I think you can have more of a leadership type characteristic and personality, but getting into that confidence of, for example, the ENTJ, I think it's grown into you. So yeah, I think that's sort of how it would work.
Yeah.
In my experience, at least.
And is it then like difficult for you, for example, to like work together with others? Like, because I mean, of course, like the commander like wants it a certain way. Like, do you already feel that like in the, let's say, really early journey of your startup that you can be like, oh, I want it that way. And this person wants to collaborate with me in that way.
So actually, that's spot on. I used to work with someone who was also ENTJ. This was part of an entrepreneurship program I was part of. And we really had to work on making sure we had that balance because we both had very strong ideas and a very strong vision. And we did have an aligned vision, but making sure that we didn't overpower each other and that we worked together, it was something we definitely had to think of because I feel it's great to have a balance of people who prefer to lead or prefer to be led. So it's something that you have to keep in mind because that is something that also often causes conflicts in startups. So getting that balance is very important. Yeah. I used to have a couple conflicts, but as over time, like I started to learn how to balance that.
Yeah, which is also, I think, normal part of any startup. Honestly, I think I haven't really met I have met a lot of founders that had like that fallout with their co-founders and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's also just such a highly emotional like environment that you're in, so it's so difficult to kind of like balance like the ups and downs of founders and like the hardships that you endure. But let's talk a little bit more about the kind of LaunchX program that you were part of, which is quite awesome. I honestly have to say I had never heard from LaunchX before I discovered you. Can you tell us a little bit more about like how you got into it and how this whole process were that you were like, oh, I want to be part of it and I want to be also in part of it in person and not online?
Yeah, so I was involved before the program in startups, just working in startups, but I never created one myself. So that is something I always wanted to do. And okay, I was on vacation. I was like, after I'd say a couple months, 2-3 months, I want to be in a program where I actually get it done with people who were my age. Because very often I worked with people who were older than me. And well, that's fine. I'm totally fine with it. I'm used to it. I did kind of miss that experience. So so I first searched up best entrepreneurship programs for teenagers online. And then I saw LaunchX and I thought, is that from Elon Musk? Like LaunchX sounds exactly like something he would say, he like calls everything X. But so that's the reason why I looked into it. And then I found out it's a very prestigious program specifically for teens from all over the world. And it was a pretty rigorous process to apply. It took, I think, at least 10 hours. And I think that's probably what separates people from just applying to normal things and applying to very prestigious programs. Because you can spend lots of time in the application and you can still not get in. But I think that kind of creates a cohort of people who are extra passionate about entrepreneurship. I wanted to go in person because they had a San Francisco location at UC Berkeley, and I thought that was fantastic because I've never been to San Francisco. At the time, I never went there. And that's something I always wanted to do. So I thought, this is my exact opportunity. So I'm going to do everything I can to be able to go to this program. And I applied. I got invited for an interview, and it went very well. I got accepted. So then at 17, I flew all the way by myself to San Francisco for a month.
Crazy.
And yeah, I stayed there for a month at the program and worked with people I never ever met in a place I'd never ever been to. And yeah, that's kind of where it all started.
That's crazy. I mean, like when I was 17, like I did other stuff, but not think about founding a business for sure. So that's already like really remarkable, like how young you were, like already kind of like really seeking this experience. Because I think one thing is like you are kind of Mark Zuckerberg and you just kind of like stumble upon a startup that you say like, oh, wow, I think I have to found this now. And I think the other thing is that you're really like, I think you're really intentional seeking this kind of like founding experience and you really want to get involved in the space. But how was it then? Like, let's say, it's all fun and games. Like you apply, like, oh yeah, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
But then it's like first week, like no family, no friends, complete new environment. You're like on the other side of the world. Like, how was the first week like then?
I'm going to be honest, I was actually just very excited. I was thrilled because it was something I always wanted to do. I've been itching to do this for my whole life. So, okay, at first, I kind of just ignored the part where I was uncertain about things. So I was excited in the beginning. But then over time, I'd say in 2 weeks, that's when I found myself in moments where I was by myself in my dorm at UC Berkeley, and I was thinking like, I actually don't know anyone here. If I am super lost, I know I can talk to people, but not people who know my whole story, right? Where I'm from. There were only 2 other people, I think, who came from outside of the US. There were lots of people from Kazakhstan, actually, but not many people from West Europe. So that was something I did have moments of where I was like, ooh, that's a bit difficult. But I just pushed through, to be honest. And yeah, I think after the program, I was very tired. I think that's when everything like set in. But I was in a very just driven like mode during the whole month. So yeah.
Were there moments that you thought about quitting?
Yeah, I think it was mostly like when we had if we had team conflicts, or we were like, is this actually going anywhere? You know, you always have those moments in your startup, right? Where you are uncertain and you don't exactly know where this is going. So I think in those moments, that's when I didn't necessarily actually think of quitting. That was something I didn't really have. It was just a moment of like, how long is this going to take? Is this going to become as big as I want it to be? Yeah, more in that sense.
Yeah. And of course, we are like now 1 year further from like, I mean, what now Foundity 2.0 is. What was the initial thought? Like, was it really something driven by you? Like, did you already have that feeling? And I think most importantly, because everyone is anxiously awaiting this listening right now, like, what is Foundity? Like, what kind of gap are you solving?
Yeah, so this actually, my idea started before the program, actually a long time before, something that I was thinking about in my whole entrepreneurial journey by myself when I was younger. I was a new entrepreneur. I didn't necessarily have the strong network or the strong knowledge base to start a startup. And while I was looking for a platform online at that time, I couldn't really find something that was easily accessible, not super niche. And I was searching for something where the barriers of entry wasn't so overpowering. And I knew there were accelerators and programs at that time. So that was the way I went through it and got myself into the startup world. But then I realized during the program, what if we create a platform that creates a space that provides these opportunities for people to get into the startup world? So that is why we are building an online ecosystem for anyone, anywhere to build a startup. And this is in a way that's more social, more accessible, and more interactive. So there are many platforms like Crunchbase, Co-Founders Lab, LinkedIn, but they're either focused on one feature or they have a very large price to get in, or they are too high skill level. So that makes it hard for someone who does not have that base of startup experience to use a platform like that. So people have different stages and different goals. So what we're doing is providing a online hub that is curated to their story, their goals, and what they want to build. And it provides them resources to help them be able to do that. And this is through, for example, idea feedback. We created a space where people can talk to each other, post their ideas, sort of like Reddit, but more niche and less chaotic. You know, you get lots of spam on there. That's why we created a space called The Circle, where people can post their ideas and really iterate in that process of when they're trying to get that startup out into the world and test it out. We have our learning hub that is where people can get essential knowledge, talk to people, go to online events. I hosted one recently on how to fundraise, and it gives people the opportunity to access mentorship and talk to people one-on-one that is maybe difficult to get online at this moment. For example, we had Eric Zhu or Rhett Jones. Those are people who are seen as very, maybe almost unreachable, right? Because they're so well-known, very established. But we wanted to create a space where people don't think that, don't doubt themselves or create barriers for themselves. So we are creating a space where they can learn as well, in a way that's social. And for those who are more advanced in their startup, we also have our database. And that's where people from all over the world display their startup, what they're working on, their milestones, updates on progress, and really have a centralized space to connect the startups in our platform called Foundity. And we are now working on creating a focus for VCs as well, because we talked to lots of VCs and they said it's hard for us to keep up with startups because right now we're just going through emails, right? That is very difficult for the investors to keep up with progress, but also for the founders to keep them updated. So while we have this database of all these startups creating amazing things and growing all constantly, we are using this to help investors keep up with them, because we're creating like a follow feature of the startups that we have. Yeah. So we're kind of shifting soon from only founders to also investors. Yeah.
And also then, to basically then connect like all the different parts of the startup ecosystem together. There's also a lot of like words. If I think like I'm Daniel, I'm 21 years old, I want to build the next AI startup, what can I do on your platform?
So, okay, this is kind of what we do on the platform as well. Do you already have an MVP? Are you at the idea stage? Which stage would you be at?
I already have an MVP.
Okay. So then what are your next steps and goals?
I have an MVP. I need fundraising and I need to find a technical co-founder.
Okay. So on our onboarding form, we ask questions like these, and we would recommend you to go to our database and list your startup and provide updates and insights on what you're doing. So we have the milestones and updates page, we have adding team members page, and we have the articles page. So what you would do is add your goals, add your problem statement, mission statement, what you're doing, and keep your progress on there. And what we do is match you with people who are looking to invest or join teams. So that is a way we meet your needs. But also, as I said, what we're doing next is we're creating a follow feature for investors. So soon, I'd say in the next month or two, we will make it more suited to investing needs. So that is something we're working on. But yeah, I'd say that for now.
Nice.
And also, we obviously have more features to connect with people if you would like to find co-founders. Like in our Learning Hub, we have events where you can talk to people all over the world. And I'd say that's a very social way. You can also find co-founders, yeah.
Super sick. And when did you first have a feeling that kind of the startup that you're building is like something is kind of like really hitting a nerve in the market? Like, was there a moment where you were like, oh, this is why we build it?
Yeah. So first, it was right when we entered the program. That's when we really found the need. But for the program, we were allocated into teams of other entrepreneurs. I had 3 other members in my team. And I first talked to them about the problem I had. And that they immediately clicked with the idea. They said, I had the exact same problem. And we did more research and we found there was actually many people with the same problem. Lots of teenagers don't know where to go. They don't have the network. They don't have the resources. They don't know all those niche platforms like YC Startup School maybe, or Co-Founders Lab. They cannot go to so many multiple platforms, right? So that is where we got the initial idea. And then we went into the program with 80 other students, and there we did more research within the cohort because they were our target audience. Teenagers who were new to entrepreneurship, wanted to create a startup, and were from all over the world. So that's where we started our research and did lots of interviews with them. And yeah, that's where they showed really strong interest and a problem that we were targeting.
How many of the other startups that started there are still live right now?
Yeah, I'd say maybe one other startup.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's actually because some people view the program as something that's time-bound. Some people view it as university experience. But it's really not built for that, actually. While it is something that lots of people do, it is actually a great formula to actually get something out there because it's sort of like an incubator. That's 1 month. Essentially, that's what it is. So yeah, I guess it's kind of like how you approach it and how much you meet a market need and problem. So if you have a good idea from the start, I think that's also contributes it to it.
And are you still together with the initial founding team, or you already have new like co-founders?
Yeah, so we had different goals in our team in the program, as I kind of explained just now. 2 of our members were kind of seeing it as a time-bound thing for more experience. So they worked with us in the program, but I am still with my co-founder, Joy. She is from Vancouver, and yeah, she's my co-founder, and I've been working with her ever since.
That's so cool. How was that experience with kind of, I don't know if I'm right, but you seem to be also like very competitive.
Oh yeah.
And there's of course a lot of like other superstars in this program, right? Everyone who went through the program like applied, like everyone is like I think quite driven. Like how was that environment for you, kind of like this competition? Was this difficult for you?
Yeah, to be honest, I was slightly shocked that everyone was actually competitive. Because the application is very rigorous, I can see why the cohort resulted in people being super, super driven in what they're doing. But yeah, it was slightly tense, to be honest. It was something I had to get used to. It was great to have people who were as passionate as I was and driven. At times it was slightly difficult, yeah, because usually it depends which environment you're in, but usually there's a balance of people who are kind of go with the flow and people who are super driven. But being in such a tense environment does push you, but it can be a little bit of pressure. I tried not to focus actually much at all on other startups, but I was very focused on what we were doing. I kind of just looked into our progress because I was very motivated to make it happen. I was just so focused on what we were doing. Yeah. So I kind of like pushed it to the side what other people were doing. I was looking, but I was not taking it to heart. Yeah.
And from an emotional level?
I think I'm competitive, right? So I did have a pretty strong sense of, okay, they're doing this. We have to be further than that. Actually, before the program, we were already looking into what other people were doing. Because usually people in the program only start once the program started, right? But we were like, no, we're starting 3 weeks before. We're already solidifying our idea. We're researching the market. So we were already, I suppose, ahead from the very beginning. But yeah, that's kind of what we did.
And from a personal level, how do you deal with stress? Because you keep on, like, it's really interesting. You keep on talking like about the company and like about the idea.
I suppose I've conditioned myself to think that way. Yeah.
Doubting yourself, are there moments where you think like, oh, maybe we don't make it, like a kind of also like more like a personal approach, because like I think you talk a lot, which is super great, about like the company and like the competition and stuff like this, but I want to give, like, I think there's also like the Isabelle behind the CEO mask, and like how do you deal with like with this pressure also to sustain, to like compete, to win, and also like your urge to really, really, really make this work.
Yeah. I think it put kind of a strain on my physical health as well, because what I tend to do is when I'm very focused on something, I push myself a lot. So then for example, I forget to eat. I drink too much coffee. So that's why after the program, I was like, I needed to kind of recover.
Yeah.
Also emotionally, like I was in a constant result equals restful state. So it was like I first needed to get these results and then I could be calm. I kind of had this feeling of I need to get to this point and then I can feel good, right? Which is, I think, something that lots of entrepreneurs have, but it can be very toxic because you kind of never reach that point, you know? But
do you think that are you hard on yourself?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit on that, you know, no matter at which point you are in, you constantly look at someone else who's slightly more successful, right? I think that's something that lots of people have. So I do try my best to avoid that because I'm thinking like probably when I get to that next step, I'm going to think of the next step again. So I do kind of try to make myself like happy with where I am. So try to enjoy the journey, you know, because that's kind of something that successful entrepreneurs also look back at, right? So that's kind of what I try to think of.
From all the experience that you had last year, like what do you think is kind of like the most unexpected learning that you had from like entrepreneurship or maybe something also in your personal life?
So in entrepreneurship, I think it takes a lot of integrity, honesty, and being humble. At least that's something that I think helps a lot. So I was really surprised by how kind and similar people can be, because I talked to all these people who have such big dreams, and talking to them made me realize how similar we are actually. And I talked to some really successful entrepreneurs and I realized, oh my gosh, they're also not fully satisfied still with where they are, while I look up to them so much. So I really found out how similar people are, even if they're working on different things. That's something I was really surprised about.
And of course, like you're 18 years old, and I really don't want to make this episode about kind of like, oh, the young founder. And because I think you experienced that like quite a lot. Like, are you not sometimes also sick of this kind of like, oh, you're so young, so that's why, I don't know, like either in a positive way, or you're so young, or in a negative way, or you're so young, like, or you don't know this, or you're like, or you're so young, you have everything in front of you, so like why stressing? Is that sometimes also like kind of taking a toll on you, this whole age discussion?
Actually, I kind of use it to my advantage, because at least in the kind of sphere that I am, you know, like, you know, YC Techstars, all these, I feel like they kind of glorify very young entrepreneurs. You know, the high school dropout, the Columbia dropout. I feel like they sort of glorify that. So depending on who you talk, I think it can be a very positive thing. So I don't necessarily think of it as a bad thing. I think it really depends on who you talk to. Because, for example, some investors prefer people with lots of experience. Some investors love that you are super young. So it really depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I also think that in the startup world, there's especially in the startup world, there's like a big clash of kind of generations. Like, what do you think, because you're like Gen Z, like what can other older generations like really learn from this young generation? Because of course there's a lot of prejudice towards Gen Z.
Yeah.
But what do you think is like totally not true, and where should they listen more?
Yeah, I think, for example, my dad, he is into business, but he is much older than I am. And also other business people that I talked to who were older. I think they are not as aware of how fast and dynamic the startup world for young people can be. Because there are things that can happen much easier than before. For example, fundraising, right? In my experience, for example, I posted a lot on LinkedIn, funds reached out to me, and then that's how some people get investing. Hint. But that is something that they, for example, cannot fathom. They think absolutely no way. There's no way you're getting that amount of money through what you're doing right now. I think the world has changed so much and gone so much faster. I think that's something that's very different and they can look into, because there's lots of potential in things I think they don't see potential in. So, yeah.
Now we talked a little bit about the older generation and like the message to the older generation. What would be your message? Because I think you are like really kind of almost like 2-3 steps ahead, I think, of many founders your age. There it is again. So I do frame you. But like, I think in your TED talk, you really talked about like how easy it is. And I think you also like hinted a little bit right now, like the world has really changed, but like kind of what would be your advice or like tip for like someone who's interested in startups, interested in entrepreneurship, like how to get started? I think you said in your talk in the end you just have to take the first step. So what is kind of like the first step that you would advise to anyone who is actually interested? And it cannot be self-promotion, so they have to sign up for Foundity, of course. They have to get like a subscription, like that's all clear. But what else?
Yeah, I was about to say that, but no. I think really leverage the internet. No matter where you are, no matter where you're working from, you can create anything you would like. You have the internet. You could talk to anyone. You can research anything. You can learn anything. Everything is if you have a device and you have a network, you can do anything. Absolutely anything. So don't limit yourself to, oh, I don't know this, I don't know that, I don't know this person, I am from here, how can I reach there? You can talk to anyone with your laptop or phone. You can learn anything from your laptop or phone. So just start from there and you can do incredible things just from where you are.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think that's a really nice message. What I always find super interesting is there's like the theory, there's the stuff that you can learn, but then you do something and you are like, oh, okay, so there's no book, no founder, no mentor, no ChatGPT who could have taught me that. If you look back now and for like kind of like the past 2-3 years that you are like in the startup scene, founding yourself, like what's something that like you really couldn't have learned and that you really only learned kind of on the fly?
I think business is something very people oriented. So there is no step-by-step guide on how to create a business. That's also why lots of people avoid starting a business, because they're like, where do I even start? I have some idea, but then where do I go? I think really just iterating and talking and trying, doing that process a lot, testing, is just what gets you to bring something out there. And constantly getting feedback, that's something that requires real world implementation. And no AI or step-by-step list can do that, because they don't know the entire context of your story, the world's story, and what you're working on. Because you can't put everything in your mind onto paper and everything on paper doesn't know everything that's in your mind, right? So I think that's something that you just really have to test out.
Yeah. There's also that book from, I think I'm going to butcher his name, Noah Keegan or something like this. I think it's called the 48-Hour Startup or the Weekend Startup. I think the 48-Hour Startup would be a better name. I hope he chose the title. And I think that's also really cool because you really can kind of like validate your idea and like found something that you want in like really 48 hours or something like this. And I think one of the most powerful things is because you just have to make steps. So you have to ask like someone like, hey, if you believe in my idea, like transfer me like $1 and those kind of things. And while it seems a little bit like trivial sometimes, I'm like, yeah, okay, but what do I do with $1 or something like this? I think it is cool because it really teaches you like just to ask and just to like break some doors, and then you really realize that there's also people around you that say, yeah, of course, like I'm gonna give you $5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool to also like learn in this journey. And if you would look back into your kind of like journey, like what energizes you the most? Like what is the thing that where you get like the most energy, like founding? Is it like leading people, or is it some building the company, the vision, the fundraising?
Yeah. Not the fundraising necessarily, but it does help, but no. I think really talking, first of all, to people who share that rare drive on solving something and having an impact on people. That's one thing that really drives me. Second thing I think is the most impactful for me is when I talk to people and they literally say thank you to me because I solved their problem. And for example, when we launched Foundity 2.0 on the 26th of May, we got so many messages of people just thanking us for creating a space like this, where creating their startup and working on their startup is easier now. I think getting real stories like that is absolutely incredible. I can get one message like that and then think about it in the entire day, every second. It just makes me so happy because it's not just something you put on the internet. It's something that actually reaches people. For example, in Venezuela, we have someone, or Poland or India. And I'm like, wow, that's actually incredible. It's actually reaching people and helping them. That's something that drives me crazy.
Real world like impact that you have on people, basically. That's super cool. How would you define kind of success for yourself?
Kind of what I just said. That part, solving problems for real people, that's something that I see as real success. Also, I know this is YC's, Y Combinator's main statement, solve real problems. That is, if you're able to do that, I think that's what success is.
And how do you deal with defeat?
Defeat of not being able to do that? I think you kind of have to start from the problem. If you are not necessarily able to do that at the stage you are at, I think getting a lot of feedback from people who you are targeting, I think that's something that really helps. Getting lots of feedback, iterating, and continuously trying to match that problem and solve it. I think that's something that can get you to that success. Yeah.
And is it for you more that you kind of like, do you get more driven or like more motivated if you have to prove it to yourself, or if you have to prove it to other people?
I think it's more myself. I don't think, you may think it is for other people, but actually it's just probably for yourself. Because there is something, at least for me, I was very connected to the problem of myself not being able to get into the startup world when I really, really wanted to. That's something that really resonated to my story and my heart. So being able to achieve something that solved my problem, but also other people, that's very close to my heart, and yeah, that's what really drives me. So
it also really comes from kind of like a really very personal like rejection.
Yeah.
Is it difficult for you like to deal with rejection? I mean, you build a whole startup
actually,
around it.
Yeah, because like, no, not at all. Because there's so many people who say yes, some people say no.
Yeah.
Some people who are like absolutely yes, or some people are like absolutely not. So in that sense, no. I think no, actually. I'm totally fine with rejections. I'm very desensitized to it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And also I think you have to become a little bit, as a founder, you hear like so many times like no, and things don't work.
Exactly.
Instead of like everything is fantastic, like we keep on working.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Because you can get really big rejections. But I think lots of entrepreneurs say this as well. You just have to keep pushing. Even if you don't necessarily know after this rejection if you're going to get anywhere, I think really just continuing is all that it takes.
It also makes it so exciting, right? Like I think a lot of times like you wake up and you don't really know how your week looks like. And there's so many like curveballs and caveats that happen to you like just throughout that you have to deal with, which also makes it super exciting, I think.
That's what makes it exciting, entrepreneurship, because your world can change so fast and you just never know. The next day you could have a message from someone and it could completely change your world. So
yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, you've been like quite focused on work, like going to San Francisco back and forth, creating this cool startup, speaking on Web Summit, on TEDx, on all the stages. There's a lot of spotlight around you. Yet, do you think that like the founder journey is also a lonely journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's also one of the reasons we started Foundity, because lots of people think they are by themselves in this, and that does create a very large barrier of entry to entrepreneurship. That's why we also want to help people realize there are other people who are in the same situation as you, but also can support you, and you can work together. And I think that's something very important, being able to connect to people who may feel this way as well and work together to push through that, I think.
And if you could, like, if you look back the past year or maybe even longer, like, what are you most proud of, like, that you've achieved?
I think getting over rejections and large obstacles and moments where you really feel like, oh my gosh, is this actually going to get anywhere? I think having gone through those moments and still continuing is something I am so happy about, because after those moments, I got great success. So even if I really sometimes didn't believe in it that much anymore, pushing through that is something I'm very proud of. Yeah.
Just like the perseverance to never stop. And what's next for you then? I mean, you're now 18 years old. You have this like small side project, Foundity. But of course, like there's like, two paths to it, right? Like you can go more into the academic world and do a degree, and I think what kind of more the parents would like. And then there's also the business world, which is also quite cool, because like you can go through like founding rounds, have new startups, like sell a business. What's your plan?
So that is something I'm thinking a lot of right now, because I actually just finished high school. I came back from San Francisco last week to come to my high school graduation this Friday. So this is really a moment where I'm in between high school and university or something else. So this is really a moment where I am thinking about it. My take is, if you have a startup that is getting somewhere you believe a lot in, I think you don't necessarily have to go to university immediately. In my experience, this is something that I'm still in the process of. I think going to an accelerator is something that can give you a lot of knowledge and support as well. Because if you are interested in entrepreneurship, that is something that has to be done in practice. So I think accelerators are a great way to go because they provide you mentorship and teach you how to launch a business, how to scale that business. And you test it in the real world. I think that's such valuable experience and a great way to learn. They provide you funding as well to help you execute that as well. So I think accelerators are a great way to do it. That's what I'm exploring right now. But yeah, I think it just depends on what you want to do in the future.
Yeah. It depends what you want to do in the future.
Exactly. I am still in conversations. But what I'm planning to do is join an accelerator and push Foundity even further to the world.
To the next level. Awesome. Thank you so much for this really, really nice talk. I still have 3 final questions for you, of course, like in every episode. But thank you for your openness. I've found it a really interesting conversation with a super driven founder. I think that became very clear. I think there's, with this passion, if you continue Foundity or any other venture, so I think there's nothing that can stop you if you continue with that same enthusiasm. So thanks a lot. The 3 final questions are, what is something that you're currently learning that you're not good at?
I think I'm constantly learning, to be honest, but getting that balance, if there ever is a balance in entrepreneurship, of working on your project and actually not working on your project and just thinking about something else, because you get very conditioned to work a lot. I think giving myself time to not do that and be able to relax is something that I'm really learning and working on, because it does create a big impact on you. So I think also avoiding that and burnout is something very important and that I'm learning to do.
For sure. Yeah. What name would you give this chapter of your life?
I said this actually at New Year for 2025. I already had this feeling that I was going to be like this. It's hard to put it in one word, but I think lots of positives, lots of obstacles. It's just, this is not very creative, but just a lot at the same time. That's kind of what I would describe it as. Yeah.
Nice. I like the title a lot. I think that's just a lot. It's just a lot. That's a good title. And last question is, if you could send a SMS to all mobile phones in the world, what would you say?
I really, that's a good question. I wish I could do that. Don't push it back. I think that's something I would send. Don't push it back, because I think people should act more. I think there are things that lots of people want to work on, but don't actually do because they limit themselves. And I think everyone should take more of that leap and do whatever they'd like, because you have one life, right? So just take every chance you have. That's kind of what I want to send. Yeah.
And don't push it back.
Exactly.
Super nice words to end this podcast. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming to the 301 podcast. And for you, it's now time, of course, to like and subscribe if you're still listening. There's still over 80% of the people that are listening right now and they are not subscribed. So go hit that subscribe button, and we see each other next time in the 301 podcast.